Hi and welcome back to the Blind My Glory Fitness YouTube channel. In this week's episode, I'm going to be talking about macronutrients, really just going over a simple view of what they are and why they're useful. Basically, when you're talking about losing weight, gaining weight, it's always calories in versus calories out. Whereas macronutrients are the grams of protein, fats, and carbs. They're going to compose those calories, and having the proper ratios are going to determine whether you're gaining muscle or fat, or in the weight loss side, whether you're losing muscle or whether you're losing fat. Because I could be in a deficit at 1,200 calories of carbohydrates and I definitely will not be losing the right sort of weight, or vice versa. I could have a surplus that's all fat and I will not be putting on muscle. So what I'm gonna do is just go over a simplistic view of each of the macronutrients individually, give you a calorie count for them, and then I'm gonna go over not a perfect ratio, because there isn't a perfect ratio, but a balanced ratio, and then the easiest way to track them. So we'll start out with probably the most commonly consumed and most widely consumed macronutrient. That's gonna be carbohydrates. Carbohydrates can basically be broken into two categories. So you have high glycemic and low glycemic, or simple and complex carbohydrates. Higher glycemic are gonna be like simple sugars, so fruits, candy, anything along those lines. And then complex or low glycemic are gonna be like sweet potatoes, yams, rice, anything along those lines that take your body a little bit longer to store as glycogen, and it's gonna spike your insulin less. Carbohydrates are the primary energy source throughout the body. It's the preferred source of energy. It's what our brain functions off of, it's what our organs function off of, and it's what we exert when we're doing physical activity. When you consume carbohydrates, they get broken down into something called glucose and then stored as glycogen, and as that glycogen is expanded, you have to replenish it to keep your energy levels high. And that's why it's an essential macronutrient. Next, we're gonna go into fats or lipids. So with fats, you can kind of break them into a couple different categories. You have healthy and unhealthy fats. The unhealthy fats are gonna be composed of trans fats and saturated fats, and then the healthy fats are gonna be unsaturated fats. For unhealthy fats, you're gonna be looking at like fats from sources from animal products. So like milk contains a lot of unhealthy fats, and then animal meat as well. For healthy fats, you're gonna be looking at like avocados, nuts, olive oil, things along those lines. And really, fat, it's gonna serve its purpose in helping with proper hormonal control. It actually helps insulate the body, keeps the core temperature regulated correctly. And in the absence of glycogen, fats can be used as an energy source as well. So that's where you get like keto diets that go into play. Lastly, we have protein, and probably the most heard macronutrient when you talk about bodybuilding or any sort of fitness sort of environment, really. Proteins basically are composed of essential and non-essential amino acids. A complete protein is gonna be a protein that contains all those amino acids in there, so all 20 of them. With the essential amino acids, they're amino acids that your body does not produce on its own, so it's vital to get them from outside sources. So usually with the complete sources of protein, you're looking at like eggs and animal products, and incomplete sources of protein would be like a vegan or a vegetarian protein, or plants, any sort of thing that is not gonna have a complete amino acid profile. Now these proteins are essential for like the actual muscle recovery and the muscle development. They help rebuild broken down tissue. You're also gonna notice that in the absence of carbohydrates, basically last ditch effort for your body to have energy, protein can get broken down and stored as glycogen as well. So a proper keto diet would actually be low protein, minimal to no carbohydrates, and very high fat. And that's a common misconception there. Now when we go into a ratio of these macronutrients, like I said before, there is no perfect ratio. I just really aim for the most balanced ratio I can find. I don't have like an absurdly high protein count to carbohydrates, or vice versa. I typically go with 35% protein, 40% carbs, and roughly 25% fat. My body runs off carbs very well. I mean, that's how it's always been being an athlete. So everyone's always scared of the carbohydrates when they don't realize that it'll actually improve their physical activity. And if timed properly, they can still achieve the physique they want. Now, a way to implement this into like a current program is you calculate where your calories are supposed to be for the day. So once you find out kind of where your total daily allotment of calories is, basically what you're burning throughout the day, including your physical activity, you can then go ahead and break down your macronutrient ratios and set apart how many grams of protein, how many grams of carbs, and how many grams of fats you need to eat to make that calorie goal. because you still have to be in a caloric surplus to gain weight and a caloric deficit to lose weight. So the objective is to basically lose, more body fat. You have to have a good ratio. You have to maintain enough protein to where you're in the deficit, your body doesn't eat muscle tissue. Then if you're trying to put on muscle, you have to make sure you're getting like enough protein to rebuild the muscle tissue as you're breaking it down, even if you're already in a surplus. Otherwise, what you're gonna gain is gonna be unwanted weight. Now, when we talk calories, you have 4 calories per gram of protein and carbohydrates, and then 9 calories per gram of fat. So fats are the most calorie dense macronutrient out there. So that's something you definitely have to keep in mind when setting out how many grams you're supposed to hit of each. Now, as far as tracking the macronutrients goes, there are a ton of different ways you can do it. You can go old school and bring around a notepad or a notebook with you everywhere you go and write it all down and calculate it all at the end of the day. But I would just suggest using an app. I mean, they make tons of apps nowadays. I use one called My Macros Plus. It's really simple. The only thing you have to really avoid with those apps is the user entered data, because a lot of that is incorrect. So if you're gonna go get an app, I would suggest putting in your own data for basically your breakdowns of the foods you're entering, and then go off of your own entries and not somebody else's entries, because there's no sort of system put in place to basically verify the answers that these users have put in. So go ahead and do the little bit of extra work for a few days, and then it'll be really simple. So that's my short little segment on macronutrients. If you have any further questions, you can always message me, you can comment on here, and I'll try to answer them. Then if you have ideas for next week's topics, just let me know and shoot me a message. We'll go from there. Thank you and have a great day.